one of their events. Thousands of people, huge event, and they were down, things are tough struggles, talking about all the difficulties they got. And they said, is there any place where somebody did something right? You know, where they won something. And I said, absolutely. The Postmaster General. And by the way, how is it that you people have a Postmaster General in charge of your operation who's not on your side? I mean, even in the overall scheme of things, that just doesn't make sense. But the Postmaster General announces that they're going to get rid of Saturday service. And everybody, like, the whole of the media is sort of like, yep, they're getting rid of Saturday service. It's almost like it's announced, it's going to happen. That's it. And back at the end of March, I believe, I hope I got my dates right, March or April, across this country, there were these little rallies in front of post offices. 50 people here, 100 people there, 200 people there. And I don't know if you noticed the timing on that, but they had the rallies, and a few days later, Congress told the Postal Service not to shut down Saturday delivery. That's pretty good. That's what I say to the teachers is, that's actually showing that you, with a little bit of push, you can actually do things. And I would argue that the postal unions need to do a little bit more of that push on a regular basis. You got to be physically present out there in front of these centers and talking about what will be lost. And I hate to say that you can't just call up a reporter and communicate important information to them. It'd be wonderful if you could, but I believe we have a lot of evidence that doesn't always work. And so it becomes necessary to do the rallies, to do the organizing, to physically be out there so that they can take a picture or something. We went out there for the post office over on the east side of Madison. Congressman Mark Pocan, new congressman from this area, got up to Washington, said one of my first priorities, saving the Postal Service. Congressman Mark Pocan was out there, some other folks. But you know what's incredible? Media that hadn't covered anything at all with the Postal Service. They all came out, trooped out on Saturday afternoon, turned their cameras on, and everybody saw it. And you need to do more of that. I wish I could tell you easier. I wish I could make it softer. But the fact of the matter is, it's the physical presence is the way that you've got to communicate about these closures. There can't be another round of these closures. We can't take it. You know as well as I, we can't close down the next set of these processing centers. We can't do that. If we do, there ain't going to be anything left. And not enough left to make this work. If you take the entire state of, I think we're talking about the entire state of Indiana. Is there anybody here from Indiana? They've succeeded, it's gone. All right, there you go. But if we take the entire state of Indiana and we reduce it down to Indianapolis, you know, you say, well, we can still do it through Indianapolis, but then it gets awful easy to close Indianapolis. You know what I'm saying is that the closures get us down to that point where it's the tipping spot. So you have to get highly engaged there. And let me tell you about, to close off here a little of my comments, and the best part of these discussions is always what you people ask about and what you're thinking about. This is where I think this thing gets incredibly vital for you folks. It is easy to believe you can't beat these guys. It is easy to believe, and I know this, I know not all of you, because you're the better class of people, but I can assure you that you have friends and acquaintances who have thought, well, maybe I can just see this thing out. Maybe I can get to retirement, make it through, and, you know, it won't be great, but it'll be okay for me. I'll survive this downsizing of things. I have friends in the horseshoe industry that thought that. And the fact of the matter is that you may be right. If you are already your union editors and stuff, you're a very engaged, you're a certain class of people within the workplaces who, you know, have stepped up, and I suspect that you might make it through. But the fact of the matter is, your kids and your grandkids, in a country that is giving fewer and fewer opportunities for good, solid jobs with decent pay and decent benefits, they are not going to make it through. There's not going to be that next postal service to fill that gap. And the society is not going to make it through. I will guarantee you this. If they succeed in their broader struggle to take down the post office, whole stretches of rural America will just wither and die. Because you take a post office and a school out of some small crossroads town in northern Wisconsin or southern Minnesota or eastern North Dakota or Missouri, and you know what happens. You start to fritter away what remained of what people knew. And it's the same in our urban areas. We don't talk about it as much because we always like the rural post office. The fact of the matter is, you take a good solid post office off the main drag, the commercial drag, in a rough, battered neighborhood, right? You take that one thing out of there, what do you end up with? That whole street starts to fade away, and there's less and less focus on the neighborhood. People tend to go out, look elsewhere. The fact is, we're talking about basic infrastructure of America that is threatened. And you might make it through, but your kids and your grandkids won't. Your neighborhoods won't. The communities where you came from out in rural, southern, western, midwestern America, those places aren't going to make it. Really bad stuff happens to this country if the Postal Service goes down. So this is a very vital fight in which you're engaged. And it will not be one easy. It's going to be very, very hard. But you have this wondrous advantage. Everybody's on your side. Even the most right-wing, even Darrell Issa says he loves the Postal Service. I know, you're all there.
Sure.
The press release is always, I love the Postal Service, but, and the fact of the matter is, everybody, what's that?
Why do I feel like a battered spouse?
I know, it's a very, look, can we just say that they all have to say it, even if they don't mean it, right? And so, everybody loves you. And I know how hard it is to make those connections, to put those things together. But, and I also know that you don't win, you're not going to win one fight and it's all going to be fine. You're not going to win two fights and it's all going to be fine. This is long term. This is a fight. They want this thing. They want to shut this Postal Service down. Same as Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Right? They want them. They want it bad enough to keep coming back. And this is about money in politics. This is not about just, some sort of business thing. The fact of the matter is that we've set up a structure in this country where wealthy individuals and corporations want something. They got a lot of options to get it. And the way they do it is politics. They keep coming back. Give you a good example. We had an election in 2012. Right? Election for President of the United States. Congress, the Senate. And I don't think there's anybody in America that missed the point of that election. It was pretty clear that Mitt Romney wanted to privatize a lot of stuff. He wanted, he's a business guy, and Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, these things were in play. And in case anybody missed the point, he selected our own Congressman Paul Ryan as his running mate, who had actually developed the plans for privatization. So I was like, okay, I'm sorry, I've been out here saying this to you for months, you didn't get it, so now I'm putting Paul Ryan on the ticket, right? So now you get it, right? That's what this election is about. Now, I'm not telling you Barack Obama's a perfect player. Not telling you he got everything right. I've got plenty of criticisms of my president. But it was pretty clear, if you voted for Barack Obama, you were voting against privatization of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. You voted for Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney, you voted some sympathy for it. Well, what happened? Election day rolls around, and I was down in Toledo, Ohio, broadcast for MSNBC from the Teamsters Hall, and they said to me, even the people covering this, they said, oh, well, it's going to be the closest election ever. Go, get the chips. You got to get the chips and the soda. You're going to be there all night. Our producer went to the people who ran the hall. They said, you're going to have to put on a security guy for the night because we're here all night. Says they're going over to literally getting stopped because we're broadcasting through the night. No question, this is the closest thing ever. It's out. We're a divided nation. So I'm up there. I've got my little microphone, waiting for Rachel Maddow to call on me. Doesn't do much, but and I'm there waiting for Ed to call on me. And giving the field report from the ground in Toledo, Ohio. Because in New York they all think, well, Toledo, that is America, right? And so I'm out there, and we're getting toward 11 o'clock, and Tammy Baldwin had already been elected to the United States Senate from Wisconsin, a woman who'd been there on the floor of the Capitol protesting with us. Sherrod Brown had already been reelected to the U.S. Senate from Ohio, a guy who, as they went after unions in Ohio, actually shifted over his whole campaign, said, I'm not focusing on my own campaign, I'm focusing on defending labor rights. He'd been elected, and I'm starting to think, well, this is, it's an interesting day, but of course it's still a closely divided country. And then 11 o'clock comes, and they're like, yep, Ohio's just fallen for Obama. He's been re-elected president of the United States. Everybody can go home and go to sleep. And I mean, we're all like, but what about the chips? It's an all-nighter. It wasn't an all-nighter. So I actually got sleep, a little bit of sleep that night. I go, and I wake up the next morning, I turn on the television, and there is Haley Barbour, former governor of Mississippi, which is always an interesting place to begin a conversation. And former governor of Mississippi, former chairman of the Republican National Committee, Republican lobbyist, powerful Republican, big guy, right? Smart guy, got his governor of Mississippi, you got to know something. And so, Haley Barbour's on TV, and I'm not going to get this up, he goes, it was almost a tie. I'm like, wow! Almost a tie, like in the Kentucky Derby. Only the thing is, somebody wins. And I'm thinking, well, that's a very interesting theory, Mr. Barbour. And he got a little legitimacy, because at that point, the next morning, do one thing, see, people pick on the Postal Service, right? So the Postal Service is a little slow, maybe it doesn't go and get everything there immediately. So the one thing, well, I would definitely put the Postal Service in charge of counting our votes, because the one thing that we never do quick and never do well is count votes in America. And we seem to lose a lot of them, especially in Florida. But the bottom line is that it was at that point relatively close, right? About 250,000 vote difference in the popular vote, and they're still trying to figure out whether Florida's actually going to count all the votes and give it to the winner. And so it's still relatively close. I give Haley Barbour's due. And then a week later, Paul Ryan, who, of course, he says, yeah, after the election, I went hunting. I didn't follow the news a lot. Yeah. And so Paul Ryan comes back. He's doing an interview on TV a week later, and he goes, I'll make this up. He says, it was a very close election. We're an evenly divided nation, right? And that's almost ungracious, right? You lost, and you're still like, we didn't really lose. And then, all these guys that keep going. And you know what the incredible thing about most of our media in this country? They're like, yeah, it was really close. We are an evenly divided country. Well, no. If you kept watching the actual count of the ballots, which they do very slowly in America, and not always as efficiently as they should, it eventually grew to a point where Barack Obama, running on not privatization, I know he's not perfect, I know but what people understood was, I'm voting against shutting stuff down, I'm voting against privatizing. Barack Obama got reelected by 5 million votes. He had an electoral college landslide. Barack Obama's percentage of the vote that he got, running against the guys who wanted to shut everything down, and also I would add that people in the Senate, people in the House, that they got was higher than the percentage John Kennedy got in 1960. Higher than the percentage that Richard Nixon got in 1968. Higher than the percentage that Bill Clinton got in 1992 or 1996. Higher than the percentage that George Bush got when he lost the presidency in 2000. Understandable, but higher than when he, higher than the percentage in 2000. I mean, higher across the board. Higher, intriguingly enough, than the percentage Ronald Reagan got in 1980, when Ronald Reagan said he had a mandate to change everything in America. So, in this referendum election where it was quite clear we're going with privatization to go against it, in this referendum election, the good guys won. I'm not saying Barack Obama. I'm saying this idea won. It wasn't just Obama won. The Senate was supposed to go Republican overwhelmingly. The Democrats increased their place. In the House of Representatives elections, the Democrats didn't just do well. More people voted Democrat for Congress than voted Republican. The problem is they gerrymandered everything, so it didn't count. And so, at some fundamental level, a really big signal was sent. A great, big, wampum signal was sent. And if anybody didn't get it, if somebody had a lack of clarity, even at that point, right? And everybody loves the person who walks that letter up to their door. I love Postman Steve. Mike knows him. We have Postman Steve in my neighborhood. He's a fabulous guy. He died a couple of years ago. Postman Steve was like the coolest guy in the world. Every kid loved him. When he got bit by the dog, he said, "Oh, that's okay." And I'm serious. He's just a really sweet, cool guy. When I wrote my cover story on the Postal Service, going postal in the 21st century, about how we ought to not just save the Postal Service, but expand it, Postman Steve ran into him. He said, "I read your article, it was great." I said, "Wow, you're a Nation subscriber." He said, "No, I just read your article." He informed me that article had actually been read by many, many people before it was delivered. And nothing inappropriate, I want to add. Photocopy, something. But bottom line is that we love the human being that we connect with right there. But what the crisis of what's going on right now, of course, is the slow creep privatization. And so what's happening in your industry. They are shutting down the sorting centers. They are shutting down the processing centers. And as they do that, town by town, community by community across this country, they make the last mile less and less viable. You know, we love the postal worker who comes to our door, the letter carrier who comes to our door. We love the post office on Main Street. But what we don't understand, and what an awful lot of our media doesn't understand, is if we close down the folks who process that mail, that last mile is going to be a really long. The guys over here sitting going, "Yeah, you can't do it." And that last mile becomes incredibly long. Some woman, we have a woman here from Minnesota who you all know, but I don't remember her name. Where is she? There we go, it's right up front. And she said, "Yeah." I was saying, you know, if Daryl Issa gets his way and he shuts down Saturday delivery, why, he'll mail a letter on Friday, it won't get there till Tuesday. She lives up in Minnesota. She said, "That's already happening. My daughter mailed a letter on Friday, I mailed something to my daughter on Friday, and I kept calling her saying, 'Did you get it? Did you get it?' And it didn't arrive until Tuesday." And now, in fairness to you folks, they're going to blame the letter carrier. So you don't have to take the hit for that, right? But the reality is that as this thing, this woman back there saying yes. They will blame the letter carrier. Finally, someone does. But the reality of it is that you're the core infrastructure of this thing. We pull you out, then the rest of it falls apart. And we have been very, very successful, those of us who try to raise these issues, try to talk about this stuff, in illuminating the debate about that last mile. We have gotten a lot of Americans, I've got Tea Party conservatives, libertarian Republicans, folks who tell you government never did anything good ever, who are with us to save that last post office in their town. I'm serious. It's amazing how enlightened they become.